Millions of miles of land, billions of miles of sea, billions of different places all around. I'm right where I ought to be. Time rolls by and it's infinite, and will continue someday without me. Of all the times that there ever were, well, I'm right where I ought to be. Know where I gotta go, know where that I ought to be, know where that I gotta go. I'm right where I ought to be. Step in any direction, take another down the opposite road, out of every single path in the wide, wide world, where there's nowhere that I ought to go. Looking up at the imperial sky,